up there. Ooh, it's gonna be timed.
Oh shit.
Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I'll be giving you my thoughts on the C8 Z06 that I recently got to drive on track at Homestead Miami Speedway. So first of all, I have to give a huge thanks to my friend Ralphy Rodriguez for allowing me to drive his car on track. It was definitely an honor and a pleasure, man, so thank you so much. Ralphy's a very chill and happy guy. He's a very capable driver. And we actually met through this track driving chat group that we have here in South Florida. Shout out to the C7 Club. Couple of things I have to put out there, you know, driver's excuse right out of the bat, right guys? So listen, I don't have a whole lot of mid-engine experience or mid-engine, you know, car, driving experience, okay? So, you know, take this with a grain of salt. This is not going to be any kind of sending it and blazing, you know, setting PVs kind of review. Okay. First of all, he does not have track insurance on this thing. So that was like the first thing that I was like, oof, you know, I don't really feel comfortable. And there was also a lot of traffic. Okay. So those two things combined, not my car. I don't have a whole lot of experience with mid-engine. So that is all to say that, you know, I did not really send it on this whole session. So this is going to be more of a, you know, kind of my feel for the car versus my experience with the C7 Z06.
So I'm probably not gonna send it. You know what I mean?
Everybody says that, and then you realize how easy it is to drive.
We'll see.
And then you go. You can do whatever you want, man. I trust that you know, you haven't crashed your car, so I trust you.
Okay, so first of all, exterior and interior impressions, you know, the good and the bad. I'll give you all of it. So I do like the exterior styling of the car. I feel like it looks really, really badass in like all black, okay? But it is honestly a bit overdone, and especially the rear is kind of ugly. Although the Z06 rear is much better done than the Stingray. I feel like the Stingray is just like way too boxy. It looks a little too weird. The Z06 looks much better just because it's much wider and the vents are not like just a square. They're a little bit more like elongated. So it does look better, but it is kind of overdone. I feel like, you know, the Corvette styling of olden days, you know, I think that was a little bit, I like that styling a little bit better. Obviously, this thing looks like an exotic car, and that's very appealing. I just don't know how it's going to stand the test of time, okay? Now, guys, this is a big car, man. It's a very big car. It's actually bigger than the C7 Z06. So this thing is 6.5 inches longer and 2.25 inches wider than a C7 Z06. And a C7 Z06 is a big car, man, too. So this thing is huge. Now, interior. So the interior quality is way, way better than like a C7. Okay, a C7 is not bad, but this is definitely better, well put together. The materials feel a lot nicer. And this car was almost like a base car. Okay, this is a 1LT, so it wasn't like a super high spec'd out car. Okay, and still everything felt really, really nice. Now, because this car was a 1LT, almost a base car, also had base seats, and man, they're just terrible. They have absolutely no bolstering whatsoever. So this car, you know, it definitely needs a seat for sure. So that was another thing that, you know, wasn't really comfortable driving the car without no harness, no seat, you know. So the steering wheel is honestly terrible. Like, the shape is just so dumb. I don't know why they did that. I mean, I do know why. They have that big old display, and I guess you can see the display very well. That is one big positive of the steering wheel shape. But man, it just kind of feels weird, especially when you turn. And I have this bad habit of moving my hands around. So if you guys see, you know, sometimes I was like putting my hands over like where it squares off, and it just doesn't feel right. It's just very weird. I didn't like that at all. interior space does feel a little bit bigger than the C7, but like that big roll of buttons, it just makes everything like come towards you. Okay, so that part I didn't like. Forward visibility, however, was excellent. You could see really, really well. Like that hood just kind of disappears in front of you. I really like how the mirrors just kind of stick out. I don't know if you guys have noticed, or realized, but one of the mirrors, I think the passenger side, the right side mirror, is a little bit longer than the left side mirror. But sitting in the driver's seat, you really don't notice that. They look really good. Everything else, as far as visibility, is terrible. Like this car is very hard to see out of. Tons of blind spots. Saving grace on this particular car, he did have the camera for the rear mirror. I had this on my old pickup truck, and it is really nice. I really do like it. It's basically takes out any kind of direct rearward visibility issues completely out. So that was a huge positive that the car did have as far as the interior over the C7. I wish my C7 had that. You can see out the back of the C7, but it's a very narrow window. So this was with the mirror, with the electronic, camera thing, was much better. Okay, now let's get into the actual driving and how I felt about the car. Guys, this car is very fast. So in my previous, when I did the video comparing my lap time at Sebring versus my buddy Carrie's white C8 Z06 lap time, obviously that car is really fast, and I said it then, but inside the car feels really fast. It's not like brutally fast, like all of a sudden the power just punches you. No, it is very, very linear. It doesn't feel like it has a lot of torque, but it has a very flat torque in power delivery that just keeps pulling and pulling until red line. It feels like this thing has a large VTEC, and then like the VTEC hits, and then the torque flattens out all the way to red line. And if you look at the power graph, this is exactly what I'm talking about here. Like right around 3,500 RPM, you feel this big jump in power, and then it just starts pulling way harder all the way to red line. So that's, to me, is like very reminiscent of like VTEC, so it's kind of funny, but I never heard anybody compare it, but that's kind of how it felt to me. That was exactly what came to my mind, like, wow, this thing has a giant VTEC crossover. Obviously, amazing power band. The engine sound just dominates the whole experience. Downshifts, especially, man, it just sounds super glorious. The engine note gets really, really aggressive, like after 6,500 RPM. So that, to me, that was like the main thing about driving this car. The theater of the car really is all in the engine. The chassis has tons of traction. I never felt like I was just completely losing the car. Another thing that I really liked is that the PTM, the performance traction management, or the traction control of the car, it's really smooth. Like, I did not feel or hear it. On the C7, I can definitely feel it and hear it, even on the most loose setting, which is race. You do still hear it and feel it. The only reason why I knew it was kind of kicking in a little bit here and there was because I would see the light blinking a little bit in the corner of the dash. If you look closely at the video, sometimes you'll see it, especially like going through like turn 10, you'll see it blinking a little bit. But other than that, it was really seamless. I didn't have this, I started like in like race 1, because again, not my car, whatever. And then eventually he bumped it up to race 2. But yeah, I didn't feel it being overly restrictive. I didn't even feel it. Okay, so that was a really, really good. I really like that part of it. As far as suspension goes, the damping is very smooth, okay, and maybe a little bit too smooth. We'll get into that a little bit later. A little bit hard to tell. This track is on the smoother side. There's not a whole lot of bumps at this particular track. So a true test would be at Sebring, but to me it felt really, really smooth, which is not a bad thing, okay. I bet this thing is very comfortable on the street as a daily. Besides the engine, well, you know, with the engine, but besides the engine sound, the other biggest benefit that I see with this car is that it runs very, very cool the whole session. Like, I never felt like I was taxing the drivetrain at all. And that's a huge, huge improvement over the C7 Z06. Obviously, I've struggled with that. Everybody with a C7 Z06 has struggled with that. And this thing, like, it never really broke a sweat. I think like coolant temps was like 205 max. Tranny temp like 190. Like, it was nice. Like, very, very cool. Like, you do not have to worry about cooling on this car at all whatsoever. That to me is a huge, huge improvement. Okay, now let's talk about the things that I didn't like. The car feels very large. I mean, it is a very large car, but it also feels heavier than my C7. I know this car is probably heavier than my C7, maybe by a couple 100 pounds, but it felt quite a bit heavier than my C7. I haven't done a whole lot of weight savings in my car. I mean, I have the seat, the front brakes, and maybe the wheels. And my car is also a base car, so a 1LT, but so is this one, okay? So I think that it was really because of the soft suspension, and like that gives you a little bit of a numb kind of feeling. And I think because of that, the car also just feels a little bit heavier, you know, since it's softer, it kind of tends to like roll a little bit more. You know, it takes a little bit longer to set. So that kind of feeling, okay? So yeah, it just feels a little bit heavier. The weight bias towards the rear is very evident. To me, it felt like the weight of the car was rotating behind you, and that maybe that's not necessarily something that is bad, but for me, like in the moment, it just didn't. I'm not used to it, okay? So maybe not a negative overall, but just something that was different for me, and I couldn't get comfortable in just the amount of seat time that I have. Another thing that I didn't really like was there's very little steering feel or feedback, like even less than the C7. And the C7 is also electric steering, so you know that tells you something, right? Now, somewhere maybe due to the weight distribution, these things have, the C8 Z has, I think, like over 60% of the weight at the back. If you start to lose traction, you didn't really feel it through the wheel, you felt it through the chassis, okay? So very little steering feedback. Again, the suspension was kind of soft. It made the car feel a little vague. The next thing is, this one's big for me, like the transmission was a huge letdown, guys. Huge letdown. Like, sometimes it felt like a dual clutch transmission, but then sometimes it felt like an automatic. Hear me out. Like, sometimes it would like snap into a gear, like, you know, bam, bam, it would just snap into the gear. But then sometimes it would like kind of slip into the gear, and that really made you feel more of an automatic. And if you hear these cars in the track, you hear it. Sometimes it goes whoa, and then sometimes it goes ah, bah. So, and that is how it actually happens, you know. And I don't know how else to explain it, but like that, like yeah, sometimes it just snaps into gear, and you kind of get that little bit of a kick, which is what I expect from a dual clutch transmission. But then sometimes you don't get that kick, and you get it's just a little bit of an RPM flare up before it goes into the next gear, more of a slip. Okay, so that was a huge letdown, because for me, I think the manual is a huge part of the driving experience. You know, I'm not a pro, so in the fun and engaging way, the manual is just so much more rewarding. And if I'm gonna give it up, I have to give it up for something that is, you know, really good. To me, the transmission didn't really feel that great. It was good, and the engine power, delivery, and all that stuff worked really well with the transmission. Obviously, these cars are really fast and have, you know, they can't go very fast, so it's not a detriment to the speed of the car itself. But as far as the feel, just a big letdown. I like another thing that I kept having is I kept having like this bog on the upshift coming out of turn 8. Like I would shift, like I needed to shift like right at the bump or right after the bump, but if I did that, it would like fall on its face for a split second and then pick back up on the shift. Really weird. I think Ralphy thought that it was maybe due to the traction control. Maybe the traction control was kicking in, and then at some point he put it on race 2, which is the highest or the least amount of traction control intervention. But even with that, it kept doing it. So I ended up having to just short shift right before that bump. So I thought that was another weird thing about that. I didn't like it. Again, transmission, big letdown for me. The other big thing was the brakes, man. The brakes feel very, very weird. They have a lot more pedal modulation than you would expect. Like you can move the pedal a lot more, but like the pedal feel never really changes despite of how much pressure you're giving it or how deep you're pushing on that pedal. It just feels the same. It's really freaking weird. It's very unnatural, and in my opinion, one of the worst things about the car. I also never felt like I went into ABS, but I don't know if I ever went into ABS. I don't know that you would feel it through this pedal. These cars are weird. They do have a mechanical connection, so there is like a hydraulic system, but they have an electronic booster. So I think through that booster they can modify, you know, how much assistance you get, and therefore how much, you know, what the pedal feels like. I also believe that they can actually tune these differently from model to model. So let's say like a base car versus a Z07 car. The Z07 car having carbon ceramic brakes, they may tune that differently. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Did not like the brakes at all. Don't get me wrong now, the car does stop. I mean, I never felt like I was gonna crash or, you know, I never felt inconfident in the brake system. I just don't like the feel, vague, you don't really know what's going on there. And that, you know, with the fact that there's very little steering feel, you know, those two things combined just don't give you a whole lot of feedback there. So I don't like it. I like the old stuff. Can we just stick to hydraulic, you know, brakes, please? Come on, guys.
Badass.
Poodling around. 36s just chilling.
Yeah. Yo, this thing is wicked.
What do you think? You like that mid-engine life?
Huh?
You like that mid-engine life?
Do I like the what?
Mid-engine life?
Yes. I just, you know, I'm not a big mid-engine driver, so I gotta get used to the rear end moving.
Exactly, yeah. But it's very easy to manage.
Yeah, for sure. Where's the hazards?
Hazards are...
Okay, so here are my final thoughts. Is the C8 Z06 better than a C7 Z06? Well, in some ways, yes. but in some ways, no. Hear me out. To me, the best part of the C8 Z is the engine and the theater of the sound, the power delivery, and that really does work well with the dual clutch. Okay, I do think it is a more capable car out of the box than a C7 Z, and I think that the learning curve for the C8 Z is not as steep. And overall, I think that it's just an easier car to drive fast, just out of the box, okay? So I think that, yeah, because C7 Z, you just have to learn so much throttle modulation, and that car will bite you if you just drive it, you know, kind of nutty. You know what I mean? It will spin out on you and all these things. So it does take at least for me, it's taken a while to really kind of finesse that, where I can drive the car very smoothly without feeling like, you know, this thing is going to spin out on me or is going to come around at any time. The C8 just doesn't feel like that. It just feels much easier to drive right out of the box. But for me, the manual C7Z is just more enjoyable to drive. It's more raw, it has more steering feel, and the chassis is more communicative. The experience is more visceral overall. It is a more challenging, it's a more challenging car to drive with its weight distribution and the way it delivers power. But that's part of the visceral experience of that the C7Z delivers. You know, especially with the manual, it is just an all sense encompassing driving experience where it just demands full concentration at all times, and that says a lot. You know, it's a car that, you know, you can go extremely fast, but you have to respect it, and that makes your driving involvement obviously a lot more, and that to me is just more enjoyable to drive. Ultimately, if I had to pick one, I would still pick the C7Z, hands down. But if I could afford it, I would not mind having a C8 Z in my garage next to the C7Z, for sure. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. Like I said, we weren't going to set any records in this session driving the C8 Z. I think that the best we drove was like a 136 and change, very comparable to the Evo. But whereas in the Evo, I felt like I was driving the piss out of that car. Honestly, with this car, it was extremely easy. I'm barely pushing it, as you guys can tell by the footage. Very easy car, very fast car, amazing experience. Thank you so much again to my friend Raphael. I really appreciate it, man. Hope to get another chance, hopefully at Sebring. I think this thing would be just amazing at Sebring. And maybe now that I have a little bit of seat time, I'll feel a little bit more comfortable pushing it a little harder and a bigger track. So we'll see what happens with that, all right? But anyways, guys, on to the next one. I'll catch you later. Peace.
Dude, oh, the engine braking is incredible.
Yeah.
Mine doesn't have that engine. A couple of times it caught me off guard.
Yeah, this shit fucking has like
you
a
let off and the car goes like this.
Yeah.
It's insane. Bro, thank you so much.
No problem, brother.
I appreciate it so much.
Fun.
You kind of fucked me up over here.
Yeah, I was hoping so, you know. I'm trying to get you into the mid-engine platform.